must really believe in the Bible and be like really inquiring. And
Yeah.
so that's like me.
Yeah,
you know?
sorry you had to end the live there and we had to start over. That was
No,
wordy.
that's no problem, man. All right, so this should be good. And I had a
Cool.
couple friends that joined, and so I just want to let them know that we're back up. But
Nice.
what's up, everybody? My name is Alex. Welcome to the Broth, the most fun, serious show on the internet. I'm here live with. Do you go by? We'll call you
Uh
Little Season John.
yeah. Short season, John.
Short Season John.
There we go.
Sweet.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll
So
get your.
yeah.
Um, okay, awesome. Yeah. So yeah, we had to get our tech working, but I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, we were just talking about how it's cool to meet other people that know about this eschatology.
Yeah, it's funny. I was saying when we were offline, I have a cousin of mine who played football, and while we don't always discuss football, we talk about it every once in a while. I think the thing that we probably talk about the most is the Bible and maybe books that are not part of the regular canon.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, this whole little season, short season of Satan, most people have never even heard of this,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
uh, and to your point of you really have to do like a lot of reading and thinking and reflecting on it to even try to understand where this fits in, and I think like that's probably the thing that I like the most is when I find other people like yourself who they've also taken the time to go, huh, I read it, I saw it, no one's ever talked to me about it, and it seems to be like a growing community of people who, for whatever reason, they've decided that they want to hear more about it, right? So,
yeah,
when we were talking beforehand, I figured, we both kind of agreed, like maybe we could just talk about really quickly like how long you've been like in faith and then like how did you come to this whole idea of the little season
yeah,
um to begin with, right? Because it's honestly it's probably out of all the eschatology teaching the one thing that people probably know the least about, right? So
yeah. It almost like that might be intentional, you know.
yeah 100%.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I was like agnostic. I was an atheist for a while. I grew up. My mom grew up secular. She was from Germany and immigrated to the U.S. as a kid. And then when I was a kid, like around 7, she converted and became an Episcopalian. And so I was exposed to Christianity in the church, but like my dad is a non-practicing Jewish guy, and we never, it was like it wasn't like, okay, we're raising our kids Christian now, and it was sort of like, well, as you grow older, you can figure out what you think, and that was very formative to me because I was kind of like, well, I don't know how to pick a side here among my parents, so like I sort of picked like you know drugs, basically like
Right.
rebelling, Um, but I met my wife when I was 25. We've been together 15 years, and she grew up very Christian from the Wells Lutherans. And so her faith was always a big part of her life. And I sort of over time learned to really respect it. And then, yeah, it was trying to condense this story a little. So like, yeah, I was very rebellious. I was doing a lot of psychedelic drugs. If anything was my religion, it was like that. It's like a psychonaut. Um, but always just very much a truth seeker. And I basically sought the truth everywhere besides Christianity for as long as I could.
Yeah.
Uh, which now I understand was because I didn't want to give up sinning. Basically, I didn't want to.
Right.
face up to that stuff. So in 2020, I had a huge shift in my perspective um, with like the global health thing and the riots and all that stuff. I went from being like sort of an Occupy Oakland progressive art guy or whatever to I was in Guatemala at the time. My wife and I lived there for a few years, and I changed my politics, and I also at that point I had accepted there had to be a creator. I had come to that for a few years, and I realized Satan was real before the Christian stuff. I had like an epiphany that Satan was real, and it took me like 6 months to sort of settle into that because I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then that was when like flat Earth came up for me. I tried to prove my friends wrong about it, and discovered there's no proof that that's wrong. Um, and so then I was like, okay, like actually, the Christian story is completely plausible now, and all it almost has to be true because if there's God and there's Satan, there has to be some sort of like an impersonal God isn't going to protect us from Satan. There has to be like more good than the evil in the world. Um, and so yeah, I finally gave Christianity a fair shot at like 36, and became a Christian, and then maybe a year later started trying to discern a church to join, and then started falling in love with Catholicism, and read and watched a lot of like Catholic apologetic stuff, and yeah, that kind of brings me where I am today. But as far as the Little Season stuff, I was aware of the Tartaria stuff in like 2020 and flamenco, but I really dismissed that. But I was aware there could be some foolery with the timeline. But I sort of set all that stuff aside. I was like, I need to just like read the Bible. I need to become like a normie Christian before I become like a weird Christian, you know? Uh, like I like it was also like realizing how being rebellious was a detriment, and that's like the Luciferian spirit to rebel against everything. It was
Yeah.
like I need to just be a follower, let me just be a sheep for a while. And then recently I revisited somewhere around then I also was like I think the millennial reign was real and happened. But it didn't occur to me like the saints living through the whole thing and stuff like that. I didn't know that part of the scripture. And then yeah, so then recently I started looking at the timeline stuff again, and I was like, yeah, this is legit. And then I think it was Paul from Understanding Conspiracy that I watched the first video on like this,
Yeah.
and I by the end of the first video I was like, yep, like
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I think one of my favorite things about this is it's like in some ways it's so obvious, like Satan is at work so much in the world right now. Then it's like, well, when else would we be?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think my parents were really the most, we didn't really go to church a lot when I was younger. I went for a little bit. I think my mom was trying to make sure I had a good like solid upbringing. My dad, interestingly, he never really pushed the Bible or pushed going to church. But I do remember the very first time I said to him, "Hey, there was this show that I found called Ancient Aliens," and he
Mm-hmm.
said to me, "You should read the Book of Enoch." And I remember
Mm-hmm.
that kind of struck me because like I didn't understand why my dad was telling me I should read some book out of the Bible that I had never heard of before when talking about aliens, and like what could that have anything to do with like what we're discussing, right? Like why would he want me to go and look at that? And I, like you, spent a little while trying to disprove religion.
Mm-hmm.
I, listened to Richard Dawkins and
Mm-hmm.
Sam Harris, and I like went around, this circuit of, all the people who were atheists, and you know, the more and more that I guess I started to like search for truth, the more and more I always came back to people believing in something of some sort, right? Like,
Mm.
no matter where people were in the world, they always had somebody that they were worshiping, that they were that they were giving worship towards, and I kind of didn't know like what to do with that there, and I remember afterwards thinking to myself, there's something more to this that people aren't telling us.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just started to make me kind of search for more and more answers. And then I kind of went through this phase of learning about all the secret societies, the Freemasons, the Independent Order of Odd Fellows.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, why are these people so influential in history? Why are they like everyone who is someone is one of these people, right? And like what does it have to do with everything? And why do they have a different dating system? And what is the year of light versus the year of our Lord, right? And
Mm.
so I think that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that like there was something else that was going on around here, and it seemed to all be coded in symbolism, right? And I think the first thing that I connected here was like Tower of Babel. Like if everybody had to speak a different language and it was all confounded, what would be the easiest way for us all to convey a message? And it would probably be an image, right? And then everybody just has their thing about that image.
Mm.
And then I guess, you know, uh, 2020, that kind of like, I think for a lot of people, that was like another wake up thing.
Yep.
Uh, for whatever reason, God decided it was time for both of my parents to go, and like 18 days
Mm.
apart, they both departed.
Whoa.
And it was a lot to deal with, man. Like it was a lot. Like the weight of that was unbelievable.
I
But
bet.
I think for whatever reason, I just started reading the Bible, and the more and more I read the Bible, there would be stuff that I'd never heard of or I'd never thought about before. Um, and then I think I spent a long time in Revelation because I think like most people, I knew what the path was, right? Like this is all the stuff that was going to happen, and they're going to build the third temple, and there's going to be the Antichrist and all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I decided, hey, as I'm spending all this time in Revelation, read the whole thing through. And I came to this thing called the short season. And all the people that I asked about it, they didn't know what to tell me, or they would tell me that it would be a very, very short period of time. And I remember thinking to myself, how would you be able to do that in such a short period of time if everybody alive already knew what the real truth was, right? Like this would be hard to pull that off. So, um, you know, after reading that and searching on Twitter, I think that 59 South Lee was one of the first threads that I ever came across that talked about the Millennium Kingdom being in the past. It already happened, and that we were in the short season. And from there, it just started to like snowball all this information that I was able to find, all these channels that I was able to find. And I realized this isn't like some fringe thing. There's a lot of people out there who've actually read this who realize that it is a thing.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, whether it's now, whether we're wrong and it's something in the future, it is something that will happen. And so that kind of like grabbed a hold of me, right? Like, and I just haven't been able to let go of it because to your point, it does seem like you're in a world that's either coded in symbolism, numerology, gematria, whatever it may be. And all of these things are almost giving reverence and worship to Lucifer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, I guess maybe you have to have a conspiratorial mind for you to be even able to think that like, hey, maybe I'm being duped and maybe everybody's not telling me the truth. And maybe all of us have collectively been lied to. And once you get to that part, you're like, well, hey, it says that Satan's going to deceive the whole world, right? So
Right.
I don't know what it's gonna look like, but man, it sure seems like it's right now, or it could at least be right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah, I was big into a lot of that same conspiracy stuff too, and 9/11 was the kind of catalyst for me also. I remember in my sophomore year at college, having a good internet connection, and it was, the internet was starting to be good for researching that sort of thing.
yeah,
And I don't even remember what I was using or what, but like I figured out that, they carted off all the rubble and all that stuff. And it was like, okay, like the world I thought I lived in, you can't get away with that, you
right,
know?
yeah,
And so it was, and then I found like David Icke back then, and I read his whole book, and I was like, man, I don't know, and like lizard people, and I just like shelved the whole thing for like years. Like
yeah,
some
yeah,
people think that's what he's about, but I don't have any idea. But it did kind of put me off for a while. But now I kind of think, well, maybe some of the agents of Lucifer are like this. It actually seems more probable or possible to me now. Uh, but yeah, like, and then also like the whole 2020 lockdowns and all that stuff was like, okay, like these people have the ability to orchestrate stuff globally.
yeah,
So, um, and yeah, that was like when I had the realization that Satan was real. I was going down some of the really dark rabbit holes, like ritual abuse and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people are kind of. I was just watching, Ian Carroll.
yes, yep,
I was just watching him on Candace Owens yesterday, and he was saying that, realizing that all these people are like seem to believe in Lucifer and seem to believe like the Bible story, but they just have it twisted. How that was like changing his view, and making him try to discern the faith and stuff like that too.
yeah. It's interesting you brought up David Icke, right? Like, there's, I guess, in the conspiracy circle, right? It's not super huge, so you're gonna hear of like certain names that are out there, right? And I think the first guy was William Cooper for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, right? I did like a lot of William Cooper stuff. I bought his book, Behold the Pale Horse. And it's interesting, like older interviews of Bill, he seems to realize that maybe he was wrong himself, right?
Mm.
Like it's almost as if like he realizes that some of the information that was being fed to him was merely like a gatekeeping method to make sure that like he would keep his mouth closed, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily that this was real information, right? And so I've kind of like rethought like some of the conspiracies and things that have come out, or maybe the revelation that people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought like, are they doing that just to be able to gain trust and not necessarily that they want to have truth come out to people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that Satan would be crafty in that way where he would let a group in power do certain things solely for the fact that he could build up a case against them when he wanted to use it at the right time, right? Like, as crazy as that sounds, I think that he would like to do stuff like that, right? Like, I think he would want to be in a position where maybe he couldn't be blamed for it and he gave you a choice. And that free will, you just
Yes.
decided to do the wrong thing, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to, right? Like, even in the garden, he didn't say God didn't say that. He asked her, "Is that what God said?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just introducing a little bit of doubt in there, right? And he obviously he's extremely crafty. I mean, like if you were in heaven and you were and you saw everything that was there, you watched them make the foundations of the earth and everything else, right? It said all the angels rejoiced. And
Mm-hmm.
then you decided doing all that you were going to go against the creator. I mean, the guy must be one hell of a salesman, right? I mean, I
Yeah, for
don't
sure.
know. I mean, I'm just, like that would be wild. Like, hey, man, we can go against the dude who made this all. Like, are you crazy? I'm not doing that. Like, that seems like a horrible, horrible idea. So,
Totally. Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that, right? I think that I would. immediately, no, that's a bad idea. But
Yeah,
uh,
and it's the same for us. Convinces us to go against God all the time. Even those of us that are aware of Him will still we'll get in our head and be like, well, I mean, I could just do it this time. It'll be, I'll make
yeah,
up for it later.
yeah, yeah,
Because I do think, yeah, our natural orientation would be to just follow God, and yeah, it's like that's why God lets Satan do what he does is to challenge us. So it's not so we have to use our free will and we have to be devoted.
yeah. It's interesting, like I don't really drink a lot of alcohol. Like I'll drink socially. And Vitaly from oh man, I believe I'm forgetting his channel right now. I can see his thumbnail in my head. Um, from Alpha Talks, and he
Mm.
just wrote a book called Soul in the Belly. And he was talking about how he tries to present a biblical case about how the soul, the seat of it is actually in the belly. And um, and I thought about it where like you have lots of emotions that spring up from your stomach, like butterflies, or something that tells you that like, hey, there's trouble near, or excitement. There's a bunch of different things that like seem to pop up from the stomach. And I thought to myself, it's rather interesting that alcohol seems to be that the alchemical serum that lets you quiet the voice from inside, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe where the seat of the soul is, so that they say alcohol lets all your inhibitions go. Well, maybe there's something to that, right? Like they call it wine and spirits. I've often wondered about the names of things and like its
Yeah.
impact and effect on you of what is it actually doing, because it's one other thing, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but like obviously there's like the book of Leviticus and like things that you should eat, you eat and you shouldn't eat, right? And I think a lot of people, they'll rest on verses that say like, all things are clean and everything is good now, right? And I've heard that too, right? And I think it's you know, you could take it or leave it, right? Like it is what it is. But I did think about something, in the sense that if you were to take that book of things that you should eat and consume and not eat and consume, it seems like it's either staples of what you would eat for like breakfast, or all those things have been turned into delicacies, right?
Hmm.
So like it's almost as if in this inverted world where if he was going to be running the show, he has figured out a way that all the things that were on that list have
Ah,
been put up on a pedestal, right? Like you should pay more for these things. You should,
like
um, you
what?
know,
What would be
so
an example?
like lobsters, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
they don't have
yeah.
fin, they don't have gills, right? So like anything that would be considered like a like a bottom feeder, if you will,
Right.
um, none of those are on the list, right? Uh, Maybe you know and animals that have a hoof but they don't chew the cud, right? So like that's pigs, right? Like they don't do that. And
Right.
going down this book and some of the research, it is interesting. Like I didn't realize that the very first person to do like open heart surgery did those on pigs because of their close proximity to being like a human.
Mm.
I didn't know that like a human eye is very much like a pig eye. I didn't know that like during the transplant, some of the valves will be used because your body won't reject it. So there's like these weird things that like, I often wonder like where does this fit in, right? Like the book of Leviticus was there for a reason, and yeah, I could see him saying to those who were supposed to be spreading the message at that time, who were like doing the original churches, hey, for you guys it's okay to eat it because I just want you to go out and spread this message and do my ministry. But you know how they say the Bible was written to us, not necessarily for us. I often wonder, like, are things like that still supposed to be, you know, I don't think it's like a salvation issue. I think it's
Yeah.
maybe more of like God made a clam to be able to clean the ocean. And I don't know if he
Hmm.
necessarily wants you to be eating the filters for the ocean, right? Like maybe it doesn't have the best impact on your health, right? So I don't know your thoughts on that, but
Yeah. Well, as Catholics, we believe that so they separate the old laws into three different categories. So they say that there's stuff that was specifically the old covenant. So
yep.
like circumcision is an example of that. They were doing that for the covenant. And so then we say that we're in the new covenant now, and the old covenant has been fulfilled. So we don't have to do those things anymore.
Right.
And there's the
Like
two other
circumcision of the
categories,
heart thing, right? Yeah.
right? And so there's two other categories. One is I think is like they were just local laws. It wasn't like it was just telling us about what the laws were at the time. So a lot of the like all the food stuff falls into that one of the two where we don't have to where we don't have to do them anymore. But
Gotcha.
I don't think it's bad to follow that necessarily, as long as you don't, become, too about the letter of the law type of thing.
Right.
That's one of the things that I find really helpful about being a Catholic is like, there's so much going on in the Bible, and we're all trying to be follow God, and it can be so complicated, and people fight with each other, and then also just like feeling the uncertainty of like, am I doing this okay? And having a authority, and it all depends on if that authority is, under Christ and is the church or not, right? Because if it isn't, then you don't want to follow it,
Yeah.
which is, it's a whole another topic. But
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we were going to do the show, and I thought to myself, you know, if I were Satan and I were going to get released, number one, I might have a problem when I realize that that stone that destroyed the is make sure that all the Christians had a way of being divided.
yeah,
Um, right? And so I find it interesting how you don't have 30 books of the Torah. There are not 30 different books and versions of the Quran. But what you do have with the most amount of differences is in Christianity, right?
hmm
So that was going to be the true book, and that was going to be the thing that you needed to, base your salvation on. It would make sense that that would be the thing that would become the most copied, that would have so many different versions, and you would have different things that would keep people at odds with each other, right? So
yep,
I almost feel like between the Catholic Church and all the different denominations of Christianity, everybody's trying to get to the same place where, Jesus, there's no other name under heaven by which we must be saved. I think
yeah,
everybody's trying to get to that same place. It's just that there have been man-made traditions and rules put in place that's the thing that winds up dividing us all, right?
hmm
Um, and so, you know, that's kind of like the way that I've been looking at the differences within Christianity was maybe this was something decided upon around his release that this is the way that we're going to divide up this kingdom to be able to keep people at odds with each other for however the short season might have to be.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
most people, I think, would say, you know what? Um, Bone Broth, bro, he's a Catholic and he just has his own weird stuff going on, and I can't really, you understand what I'm saying there? Like
yeah,
it's like you create division from within, and you don't even have to do anything. It's just that you have to have these differences between them all,
yeah,
right? So like for me, that's like I've been refining my view of how I see these things, and I'm like, everybody thinks that there's probably differences here, But maybe the thing that everybody's being, tricked about the most is just that this guy decided, right? This is how we can divide this up to keep people at odds with each other.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, one of the things that kind of pointed me towards believing that the millennial reign had happened was that at 10, I think it's 1052 was the great schism between the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. So if the reign starts at the resurrection, or shortly after, it's like almost
Yeah.
exactly 1,000 years later. There's one church that whole time, and then almost immediately it becomes two. And
Right.
then if our timeline is messed with, the 1400s could have happened pretty much right after that. You know, so it
Yep.
all starts. Satan divides up the church, like that's his primary order of business. So I completely agree with you on that. And my angle with the Catholic stuff, I mean, for one, I believe it's the true church. It's like I want to share that there's like this. I come bearing excellent news that the church of the kingdom remains intact, although it's deceived with us. And but there we still have the seven sacraments, and you could go to a reverent mass in one of these millennial kingdom buildings even, and
Yep.
experience like as close as you're going to come to what it was like worshiping then when Christ was here. And they're like and I feel similar, like the Orthodox. I think it was Pope John Paul said there are two lungs of the same of the church. So like not like we need them to become Catholics or vice versa, but like we just need to be come together again. And I mean, like everybody who believes in Christ, I believe can be saved. Um, but it's just like, yeah, but there's this amazing blessing that like I can go and eat the
They have a picture of a saint, and I think everybody's seen the same picture, and there's kind of like a halo around them, right?
uh, forgot that I got to start a new meeting. Just a moment, everybody. How do I invite people? I did this earlier. Oops. Okay, he should be back momentarily. That's kind of fun and trippy. Give him a moment to come back on. What a great guy. Okay, looks like we're still live. Here we go.
Yeah, there you
My
go.
bad. I forgot the countdown because I don't have Zoom Pro.
No worries.
But yeah, we're good for another hour or 40 minutes, whatever that was.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Yeah, and then we can always, this has been good. We can always follow up afterwards, and do another one at some point too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. But I think I was saying, I guess we've all seen those pictures of saints, right? And they have that halo around them.
Yeah.
And I've seen this same image in vast distances. where like these people would have been separated by space and they probably wouldn't have been able to talk to each other to say like, hey, when you do that painting, make sure that
Mm,
you do it this exact way. And so I think there's something to that, right? Like I think the reason that they are all painted and all these depictions look the same, whether you're in a Catholic, you know, a church or you're in a regular, a Christian church or a cathedral, all of those depictions look the same. And so
mm,
this all makes me think that, yeah, if you did have a Millennium Kingdom, and you had saints that were actually living, and Jesus was still on earth ruling with a rod, right? You would have like saints, almost like you would think of mayors or governors or something to that effect, right? And they would be the ones over a specific area. And
mm,
so I've never been able to square before the idea of like where do saints fit into this and the difference between Catholicism and Christianity. And maybe this is again one of the things that Satan was going to do is, if the millennium didn't happen, then it would really seem weird, all of the saints that were there.
mm,
But the millennium happening already kind of makes the fact that like saints are everywhere, ubiquitous across both these groups, I think even lends more credence to the fact that like maybe that did already happen again, because it just seems odd that people would go around for no reason and have no motivation to do so and just paint things that all look the same, right? Like,
mm.
does that seem kind of weird to you? Like, because as an outsider from Catholicism, I didn't ever really understand the saints or talking to a saint, right? Or anything devoted to a saint. It didn't make sense to me.
Mm,
But then when I thought, hey, if you're part of the first resurrection, you're one of the ones that died for him, you're gonna be revered in his kingdom, right? And
mm.
and so I think that's like the place for them. I don't know your thoughts on that, but
Yeah, yeah. That reminded me of a quick anecdote I want to share before I answer your question.
yeah.
Living in Guatemala, we were in Mayan country, and they used to be all Catholic, and we're pretty sure the CIA had to do with bringing the evangelical church down there. Kind of a mess. But there's a story of the first, what do you call it, missionary, first Catholic missionary there in like, I don't know, the 1940s or something like that. Maybe it's, no, it's probably way earlier than that. I don't know, because they were pretty remote, like 100 years ago, something like that. And coming and telling them, like, yeah, there's, God came as a man, his name is Jesus, and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, we know about that. And he's like, how did you know it? Like,
How could you know?
according to
Yeah,
the
I'm the first one to come and
mainstream,
tell you.
right? And not only that, but they had a name. They had names for the people in their own language. They had a name for him. They had a name for his mother, Mary, and the names were similar to. So it definitely lends credence to the idea that there was, that they've been deceived along with the rest of the nations at this point, but there was
Yeah.
a remnant of a sort of global kingdom. Um, yeah, as for the saints, I feel like in some ways, I think that the Catholic Church has preserved. I mean, this is like an example of how they've preserved more of the faith and sort of the knowledge of what was going on than most. Because I don't know. I mean, it's something like there's like the Protestant Reformation, and apparently it's about corruption. Things like selling. I forget what they're selling indulgences.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Sale of
so
indulgences. Yeah.
okay, so then they changed the amount of books that are in the Bible. They there's no they hardly talk about the saints anymore, depending on which church you're in. There's so much that gets kind of a baby that gets tossed out with the bathwater. But also like I don't know, I find it very mysterious because first of all, it's like how does the church get deceived and have apostolic succession at the same time? But there's so much mystery of like how did the rest of us get to see if, like how do you change the calendar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and with the saints, like our understanding, kind of the mainstream Catholic understanding is that they're just the everyone who dies and goes to heaven becomes a saint. And so if you're talking about Saint Anthony the Great, that was a person who lived and died like the rest of us, but he embodied Christ basically more than most, and to a point where the Catholic Church will tell you like we have confidence this person is in heaven, and he is an example of someone to look to learn from, to emulate. And then because he's in heaven, he's part of the heavenly host, so you can ask them to pray for you. And that's one of those things that gets, or Catholics get accused of like worshiping the saints or worshiping Mary and stuff like that. And there is a line in the Bible where in the New Testament, it's in I think one of the letters of Paul, where it talks about like asking saints. I forget exactly how it's worded, but asking saints to pray for you, or asking people that have passed and are in heaven. So part of me kind of holds on to that with the millennial reign of like, well, we don't know that the saints were walking around for 1,000 years, but the Bible does seem to imply that. I mean, it says they're not going to die.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it says they're going to rule as kings and priests with him for
yeah,
a
you're right.
thousand years. And
You're
it
right. Yeah.
says 6 times 1,000 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I find that I was talking to my priest about, he's really busy because we're leading up to Easter here, but so I'm going to talk to him in more depth. But I was asking him some of these questions, and I was like, is this going to be fine? Can I be a good, obedient Catholic and have some differences in beliefs on some of this stuff? And he said, like, yeah, like I was talking about Revelation and the little season and stuff, and he was like, Revelation is very mysterious, and as long as you are looking forward to, Christ's victory and new heaven and new earth,
Yeah.
and don't get super hung up on like numerology or just turn it into like something weird like that, then it's fine. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to talk with him more. And I said in a stream a couple days ago, like I feel like I have a mission now, which is to bring this information to the church, like in the correct way that you're supposed to do it,
Yeah.
and respectfully and everything. And we'll see how it goes. I think most people, most priests and stuff probably won't be interested, but I might find people who know, or who knows what.
I've thought about this, and like I wonder if priests, pastors are some of like the most conflicted group because
Mm.
of the fact that they do know, right?
Mm.
So they have at least had enough time to study that they know what it says. And I know a pastor that I talked to that I used to work with, and he said to me, based on some of the things that we were talking about, like I remember one of the first things that kind of really struck me. I think it was a JT follows JC video that he did with someone, and they went over the seven churches of Revelation
Hmm.
and what they physically look like now. And this background that we're looking at, when you think of the seven churches of Revelation, you would think that maybe they're not as beautiful and ornate as this, but that they would be a functioning building where people were still going and they were worshiping because they were waiting for this to happen.
Right.
And I said to him, isn't it weird that all seven of these churches, even one of the ones that Jesus tells him, hey, hold on because I'm coming back for you and you have a reward. A
Mm.
lot of the other ones are getting a report card that they're doing bad and that they better stop what they're doing because he's on
Mm.
his way, right? And everybody's going to get their due. And when I brought that up to him, his response was that I think you're on a good path. I think you're coming from a good place, but no one in my congregation wants to hear this message, nor does anybody want this to be talked about. And I thought that that was interesting of like,
Wow.
and like I almost wonder from the priest, like that you're gonna ask this question to, if he has this same thing going on where he's like, there's certain things that I've read on my own.
Hmm.
There's things that I understand from going to school. Then there's things that people have brought to me, and I don't know if, you know, the higher up leadership wants that message to be talked about. Because you said it earlier, this is the one thing that you've never been told about, and maybe that's for a reason.
Yeah.
And maybe the people, the higher ups, they're not necessarily doing this to be sneaky or to be anything. It's maybe everybody's operating off of what they know, and if the lie has been that good and that pervasive, well, people think they're doing the right thing, and they're not coming from a bad place, right? Like
Sure.
I guess, right? So I don't know. It's interesting when I think of that whole discussion of what do the church leaders feel and the conflict that they must have inside of 99% of the people that I'm talking to think that this is some future event. And for me to tell them that all that stuff already happened in past, and you actually live probably during like the second worst time in history where the devil just gets to deceive everybody, that's not going to
Mm.
be well received.
Yeah. 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 I wonder too, for sure. I think that there's like I was just listening to the Bible in a Year podcast. I've been listening to that for it's taken me over 2 years, but I'm almost done. And it's Father Mike Schmitz, is a Catholic guy, and every time they enter a new book or a new part or section of the Bible, they do like a little intro to it, and he talks to this guy who's a Catholic scholar about things. And in it, they're talking about how like this is the time of the church, um, and because they're talking about Christ's words about the time of the church, and I'm listening to it, with kind of fresh eyes and or ears, and I'm like, this is like a tough sell. Like when I look back at when they were building these buildings, and like we have these stories of like chivalry and honor and stuff like that. That seems like that, but now like we live in a time where like children have pornography on their phones. Like how could
Yeah,
this be the time of the church? So there
yeah,
has to be people who are very conflicted and kind of figured it out on their own. And I wonder with a church like the Catholic Church that's been around, like we know it's been around in some form since before the reset. Uh, my kind of working theory is that um, they were given like strict instructions of like the people need the church. You're going to stay and preserve the sacraments and the faith. But also the people need to be deceived by Satan because it needs to fulfill Scripture.
right,
So maybe they were given instructions of like you have to let them be deceived at first. This is
sure.
how I imagine it. It was like at first it was like strict instructions, and then over time, like they forgot what they were protecting.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but I wonder, like because with the Catholic Church, it's so hierarchical. It's like either the Pope knows and they pass that information down to the next Pope, and there's
right.
like a something that was written maybe by Christ himself, a piece of paper, and it says like this is what's going on, and
Yeah.
it has to be this way or something, or they just totally forgot, or who knows. But that's what gets me so excited of like how far up the chain could a layperson get, bringing
Right.
this information, and I have to do so humbly too, because it's like it's not like God Himself revealed the truth to me. We're doing the best we can to understand what's going on.
Yeah, do you sometimes feel like you're like, but I do have to tell somebody? I do have to like let somebody know that like that this could be what's happening, because like there's this part of me that wants to tell everybody that I can who believes in any way, shape, or form. But then I also think of like, if I were to get into a time machine, if they were real, and I went back, when people were being brought out of Babylon,
Mm.
and they saw all these miraculous signs and things, and yet they still chose not to believe. Well, how am I going to convince everybody that they should believe this thing that I figured out, right? Like they probably, there's always going to be people that won't believe. So, um, although I think it would be admirable to try to like wake people up and bring them to the gospel, I also think that there's plenty of people that, you know, it's interesting that we are, I think, I don't know if you've ever read like Maccabees or Four
Hmm.
Esdras, but it does talk about a time where there will be no signs for anyone, and yet they will believe, right?
Mm.
So in a way, it's like when you go down that esoteric route of looking up all the secret societies and stuff, right? Albert Mackey and Manly P. Hall, they have all of these almost like how-to manuals for you to be able to like summon dark spirits.
Hmm.
And it sounds interesting that like if there was a short season that Satan would be allowed with his ministers, right, posing as angels of light, to be able to be the ones who did perform all the miracles that only Jesus and and they were able to do, right? It's almost like everything has been like reverted or inversed for like this short season. And
Hmm.
like I think I heard somebody say that like the reason why some of these higher up elite people worship Satan is because he's the only one who will physically like show up now.
Mm.
And I thought that was interesting where like, he will physically manifest himself, or any of his lieutenants or whoever will physically manifest themselves, and they will give you things. And so that also like kind of like makes me think that we could be in that time, because it seems as if, if you're willing to get down and worship him, you can have everything. And you could have it in a short
Hmm.
period of time. It could happen relatively quickly, right?
Yeah.
And why is that so pervasive in movies and music? And why do people do all this, signs? And I'm not going to do them because then somebody would be like, oh, he's one of them. But you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why are those things so pervasive everywhere if it wasn't that time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's still signs. I mean, I don't think I would have found God without the signs that He gave me, and I've had prayers answered too. And something else that Catholics have are these Mary visions of Mary and stuff like that. Um, and I forget where it comes from, but there's at least it's in the Catholic tradition that during this time period, Mary would be sort of the main. Although they're not talking about the little season, so I don't know if it still would work, but um, sort of the most active helper. So we believe that she's the Queen of Heaven, and a saint, so alive, and has the ear uh, of God um, with her. But there are these miracles like have you ever heard of Our Lady of Fatima?
Maybe.
So it's in Portugal. I think during the First World War, there's these three little kids, and they have these visions of Mary, and it ends up drawing a crowd over time. And the kids, they don't say we had a vision of Mary. They're like we saw this beautiful lady, and everybody tries to get them to admit, from their parents to like the local priest to the mayor gets involved, and they're all like, you kids are lying, like you need to own up to this is not okay, and they don't ever back down. And so they're supposed to go to this spot every month, and this is like, this is in the modern era, so there's documentation of this. And by the last visitation, because they're told like every month for 6 months go. There's thousands of people there, and they all witness these three kids talking to something that they can't see. And then there's it's called the miracle of the sun, and the sun in the sky turns into a spiral and moves around. Thousands of people saw that, and there's photographs of it. And it's like there's stuff like this, like the Shroud of Turin is another one where it's like people act like there's not like concrete evidence, of God.
Yeah, yeah.
There is. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's still coming. That no signs, or maybe that happened.
Or
Maybe that was during the reset. There was no there. It was just like we're gonna let Satan really mess stuff up for a minute.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I could even see where, maybe there were certain things that were agreed to that, like, you have to leave certain things in place, you have to leave certain things that are there, but you are allowed to operate with influence in this specific way.
Yeah.
Like maybe
Yeah,
more.
that's like Catholic doctrine is that Satan can only do what God allows him to do, and that
Right.
might change depending on the circumstance. And I think they look at Job for that, right? Like where at
Yeah,
first
where
at
he's
first he
he's
can't touch him, but he can do
yeah,
all this stuff, and then he's like, okay, now give him boils then, and so
yeah,
then
yeah,
now Satan's allowed to do that.
yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he does, I guess, in some way have a mission that he has to do this, and I think about the saying for, the seal of America, right?
Hmm.
And it's saying he favors our undertakings, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's almost as if like I think Madeline from Leaving Babylon has a couple videos on this, but it's almost like the things that are written in Latin there about this new order of the ages, and he favors our undertaking. It's like that new age where Satan will be in control. God actually favored the thing that we said we were going to do, right? So it's almost like
Hmm.
a spiritual contract, and maybe that's the reason why the world. I know that the world has to function off of like agreements and contracts, but I wonder if that's the reason why like everything starting at birth is about some sort of legal agreement, right? Like, I wonder if it ties back to this in some way where like God approved a way that you could do this and a way that you could operate, and maybe that's the reason the way that it is like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the role of America is interesting because it's like, on one hand, it's been sort of the headquarters of the New World Order and stuff like that. But on the other hand, like Americans are among the most faithful people still. Like, Europe, where a lot of this stuff was going on, it was sort of where the center of the millennial kingdom in some ways, these
Yeah,
buildings and all that stuff. And they don't hardly believe there. And the people who do believe, are shy to talk about it and stuff. But here it's, especially if you get out of the coastal cities and stuff, like we are a very faithful nation.
yeah,
And then there's so much evil happening here at the same time, we're like the most human trafficking is going on here and stuff like that. I think sometimes, like, if it wasn't for all the faithful Christians here, God would just torch this place.
yeah. I mean, there's more people, imprisoned here. It is kind of wild. Have you ever thought about, you ever watched Jason Jack at all
Jason Jack. Maybe.
on YouTube?
Is he talking about this
Um,
type of stuff?
yeah, yeah. He talks about the Millennium Kingdom. He usually wears glasses. He's a
Yeah.
surgeon,
Is
and
he? Yeah,
yeah,
I think I've watched a few of his videos.
and he has a video where he talks about Pangea,
Yeah,
and
that's an interesting one.
right,
Yeah, I've
and
watched a
like
few of his, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like this is really interesting to me where it's like I said, it's like the whole world you get half of a truth and then you get half of a lie. And so it's like, the lie part is that this happened millions and millions of years ago through plate tectonics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the true part of the story is that, yeah, all these places moved away from each other. And it is interesting that all the continents would fit together like a puzzle piece if you were to bring
Mm-hmm.
them all back together, right? It's the same, chemical composition of the rocks. It's all the same. So, uh, you know,
Yeah.
it's weird, right? Like I've never thought about things, but like I don't know, having this short season thing in my mind, I just look at everything differently now, where I'm like, maybe that was just another one of these ways where, I'll give you a great example, like the insane asylums in
Mm-hmm.
America. Like I've been doing this short series on the World's Fairs and
Dude,
like kind of
I love those videos, by the way. You
kind
did a
of
really
like
good job with them.
how unbelievable it is, right? Of like, the roofway, probably stuff that, this was all part of the Millennial Kingdom. And you know, I start to look at like, I don't know if you've visited a lot of the state capitol buildings, but usually my wife and I, whenever we go to like a new state, we'll do day trips, and one of them will be to go to like the state capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that like either Iowa or Kentucky has probably the most beautiful state capitol buildings I've ever seen in my life. And we took a trip to Rome, and honestly, any of those state capitol buildings look like they're from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I want to say that the Iowa State Capitol building has like four types of marble that are only found in Italy. So like, who was the worldwide logistics shipping network? Who was the Maersk shipping network that would move all this stuff? And not only that, you have a place where people were against big government. They wanted to do their own thing. And what they decided to do is they were like, you know what we should do? We should build the most elaborate, beautiful place for government people to work in. Does that
Yeah.
even make any sense?
Yeah. 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 And let's make it look like Rome, and
We'll
and
even import
let's spend
marble.
a
Yeah,
ridiculous amount of money on it, and like what, like shortly after like Civil War reconstruction, like it doesn't make
that's
any sense at
crazy.
all. Yeah.
That
Yeah, that
doesn't make
stuff
any sense.
had to have been there earlier. And yeah, like I mean, it seems like the Millennial Kingdom was global, but I don't know. I like it also seems like what was before that was pretty global too.
Yeah,
So I don't
yeah,
know.
like when you look at like the pyramids, you look at like the step pyramids,
Yeah.
um, you look at like like any of those monolithic, walls and stuff that they made. It almost seems like when you hear about Genesis 6 and there being these giants, maybe that's what all these walls were for.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they had all this stuff, is because people were really, really big and it was probably super scary back then. I don't know. I've thought about that too, of like, when you hear about the Minotaur and the Centaur and you see them on old maps, like you
Yeah.
see these old maps and it has like this exterior ring, and like some of the weird stuff that's there on these islands, I'm like, man, like that. Why are there these weird people, right? So I don't know.
Yeah. So I
Um,
got 10 minutes left on this one. Should
yeah,
we
yeah,
go until
yeah,
then, and then we can do this another time?
yeah. I say we figure, we finish this one out, then maybe we can figure out what our next stream or our next topic would be on. Maybe we can even do some current event stuff, because I have my theories about some of these things where you know, I've thought about famous people who have IMDb profiles, right?
Yeah.
Because they're actors.
Right. Right. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Right? And like I've thought about like the world stage that is, that we're all viewing. And what if there is like some sort of like real actors guild where, you know, you got to be a part of the show and this is what the show is going to be. And I think back to those Independent Order of Oddfellows. Their charter was that they would bury the dead, take care of the sick, and educate the orphan.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like, where did they all come from? And why were there so many crazy people that had to be put in palace type buildings that were palaces, right? Maybe this was part of that whole transition period where it was like, man, you know, John over here doesn't seem to want to be with the program. I guess we're gonna have to put him in the insane asylum and take his kids, and then we'll
right.
just give them their new narrative of who they are and what their history is, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be fun to talk about kind of current stuff next time for sure.
yeah,
You're talking about giants and minotaurs and stuff.
yeah,
Part of my journey to this was just as a young truth seeker. I ended up getting a degree in anthropology because I was fascinated by stuff like that and like
yeah.
cultures around the world. And um, one of the first things you learn is that the method of being an anthropologist when you do a cultural study is you move there and then you study them, but ignore everything that they tell you about who they are and where they come from, and because it's all myth and has
Mm.
nothing to do with anything. And I thought, well, that's the dumbest thing you could
I've never
possibly
heard
do,
it.
um, because even if it's like kind of mythologized or exaggerated or whatever, that's at least like a better baseline than you're ever going to have from any other way. And as I learned more about that stuff and living in Mayan country and learning about their culture and their history, and they have these codices where they wrote down in their language, like they have like a Bible where it takes you from the creation of the universe up until like uh, the time that the settlers got there and stuff, and realizing like I'm pretty sure people don't pass down for thousands of years made up stories. Like the reason they care is because this is their history. And if all across the world, people are talking about some of the same stuff. Like dragons are all over the world, giants all over the
Yeah,
world. We should take that seriously. And it was such a like kind of full circle moment when I started giving Christianity a fair chance, and then I realized like I've done that with everybody besides my own culture, like where my people come from, right?
yeah,
At least my mom's side, and yeah, like everybody believed in a lot of this stuff that we think of as super fanciful, um, and yeah, with like I feel like the easiest explanation for the pyramids is there were like 70 foot people that it was much 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 less of a big deal to move million-pound blocks. And that sounds crazy, but like you've probably seen some of the there's some evidence of stuff like that, and it's biblical. And
yeah,
that would put them before the flood, because I believe that the early giants that were really big that were eating people all got wiped out in the flood, I think.
yeah.
uh, but yeah, that's I love that topic.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would love to explore that one. I just finished a book, the Ancient Giants That Used to Rule America, and there's this
Hmm.
interesting quote that Abraham Lincoln gave at Niagara Falls, and he basically said the giants that used to rule America stood here and looked at Niagara Falls the way that we're looking at Niagara Falls. So clearly, like people knew this,
Hmm.
and it's interesting. All the mound builders and all those mounds that are in like Miss other places, these people are giants. They're huge, and
Hmm.
they have like bronze, crowns and breastplates and all sorts of stuff. Where it's like, where did they get all this stuff from, right? Like, where did this come from? And yeah, I would love to dive into that one because it's kind of fascinating. I've always wondered why these doorways are so big.
Yeah.
I wonder if during the Millennium Kingdom, God was like, "Hey, I'm going to allow you guys to be in this glorified state, and I'm going to make you bigger than everybody else." Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
given
I don't know.
that's, yeah, dude, like some of these buildings are, we're not talking about 3,000-year-old buildings. We're talking about like we're told 150-year-old maybe are more like 600 or whatever. But they seem to be, at least some of them, built for people that are a lot bigger than us. And yeah, that's a really uh, good thought that like, yeah, maybe it was during the Millennial Kingdom. It was like everything's great. You guys can be big,
Yeah.
and we're just
Yeah.
the. It kind of lends credence to the idea that we're not the direct descendants of those people. That the second resurrection were those people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, there's definitely a lot that we could discuss. I wish you lived closer. We could we could grab a bite to eat, and chat about it. No, but I'm really excited that we connected.
Yeah,
I'm
me too.
glad. I don't remember what the post was or what we were even talking about, but I'm glad that we decided to link up and talk, and hopefully your subscribers enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. I can't wait to be able to post it for some of them, and maybe if anything, maybe there'll be more happy discourse between those and in fellowship with Christ, right? Because I think we're all just trying to make sure that everybody makes it, and that you can have Jesus, you know. He says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life," and if we could just bring more people to him, I think that
Yeah, yeah,
we'd all
that's what
win.
it's all
You know.
about. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really a pleasure to connect with you, and definitely would like to do this again sometime. And I'll see you on Twitter in the meantime.
Awesome, awesome.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, so I'm Short Season John, Jon, on Twitter as well as on YouTube. Yeah, please check out my channel. Send me a tweet, or I love to hear comments I learned a lot of stuff from the comments actually.
Hmm.
It's actually a pretty awesome community. So
Sweet. Yeah, since you'll upload, I'll tell them mine also. On Twitter, I'm a Catholic Ruckus. It's Bone Broth, but that's the name. The @ is a Catholic Ruckus. And I'm Bone Broth Bro on YouTube and Rumble.
awesome, awesome.
Sweet. Well, yeah, have a great evening, man. Good to talk to
Hey,
you.
you too. This is awesome. Thanks, man.
Definitely.
Later.
Cheers. Well, that was cool. I'm really excited to be connecting with people like that. And definitely looking forward to doing more collabs with him, but also with some other people in this community. Like I said, I was doing a show about Q yesterday and just, I got excited eventually. I got into the groove, but this is really the stuff I want to be talking about right now. So we'll see where it takes us. Thank you guys for joining. And I will be here tomorrow. So hopefully I'll see you then.